Greetings, fellow book lovers, and welcome back to Colin's Corner. Today, guys, we'll be doing a quick review of The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Witham, but before we get into that, we have to go over the answer from the last Comedy with Colin segment, where I asked you guys the question, why can't towels tell jokes? The answer? Because they have a dry sense of humor. Alright, without anything further, guys, let's get into this review. So The Legend of Blackjack is a YA portal fantasy. Now, I don't read a lot of YA, so I wasn't sure if this was maybe going to not feel like I was the right target audience for this book, but all of those concerns were quelled pretty early on because I began having quite a good time with this book very early on. So we are following our main character, and his name is Jack Swift, and when this book opens up, he is an orphan. He is in a foster home in Chicago with an abusive foster mother. So Jack is extremely intelligent, I believe. I'm not sure if this is the correct term, but he's got like a photographic memory. He memorizes and remembers and can recite anything he's ever read, seen, watched in videos from any textbooks that he's read. So he's got this absolute wealth of knowledge that he can recite just kind of at the snap of a finger. We briefly, in the beginning of the book, get to meet Jack's father, and they have a lot of fun with this talent of Jack's where, they're ordering food and his father calls in and Jack's like, need your card number? And his dad's like, what, my card number? And he's like, yeah, I know your card number. So just kind of goofy stuff like that. We get a little bit of a taste of Jack's relationship with his father, and it's very endearing. They're playing like these imaginary games, going on hunts. Jack's father is, I believe, an archaeologist in the book, so he loves to explore. And this is obviously prior to Jack being in the foster home. So as you can imagine, something happens where, his father experiences this devastating accident, which ends up landing Jack in foster care. But we do get a taste of this relationship that he had with his father, that Jack had with his father. And, it was so obvious that they loved each other. They loved spending time together and hanging out. So Jack is basically in this foster home and he wants to go to college. He loves studying science and medicine. And he's got this plan to get out of the system and to become a doctor. That's like his overall dream, is to become a doctor and help people. While Jack is sort of on track to starting to hit some of these goals of his, when randomly in the early hours of the morning on, I believe, his 14th birthday, a rhinoceros essentially kidnapped Jack from his bedroom and takes him to the magical land called Keymark. Jack has no idea if this is real, if this is a dream, if he's going insane, and it takes him a while once he is in Keymark to realize, yeah, this is real. He's no longer in Chicago. He is basically in this magical fantasy land called Keymark. Now, the land of Keymark used to have this healing magic that had to do with bells, and the magic has been stolen by, of course, an evil entity. And so Keymark does not have any of the technology that we have in Jack's Earth and Jack's Chicago. They don't have modern medicine. They don't have modern technology. So the people of Keymark, the beings of Keymark, are in a pretty dire situation because, they are experiencing difficulties just getting through stuff that we take for granted, like, fighting off bacteria and just minor cuts and stuff like that. They don't understand why any of this stuff is affecting them the way that it does. So Jack is essentially tasked with using modern medicine without any professional training, mind you, to save the life of one of the most prominent figures in all of Keymark. And he's not allowed to leave unless he heals this figure, this important figure. So this is more or less the beginning of the plot going into the story. The land of Keymark is a very interesting place. We've got all kinds of magical creatures, minotaurs, elves, pixies, trolls, worms with a Y, different races of people, talking alligators and lizards, pirates. I mean, we are covering a lot here. And as you could expect, this is quite the culture shock for Jack as he is introduced to all of this basically fantasy world that he was dragged into. As the title alludes to, Jack begins to kind of start to really impress the people of Keymark by accomplishing some really impressive feats with his knowledge of technology and how science and medicine work. And he starts to earn a name for himself. We see Jack start to devise these plans to get out of situations using modern technology, stuff that we know, stuff that we are familiar with, like, for example, just a parachute. I mean, the people of Keymark had never heard of a parachute. Jack uses a parachute in a situation which I won't get into for spoilery reasons, but it blew their mind. They were like, "What did you just do? How did you do this?" And Jack said, he's just like, "It's just basic physics. I just needed this, this, and that." So essentially, all of a sudden, Jack is being hailed as a legend, and he's possessing these amazing magical powers that nobody in the land of Keymark had ever seen before. So, needless to say, Jack acquires quite the following as the course of this book progresses. This does end up being a quest fantasy, essentially, which I'm a really big fan of. There's a goal at the end of this journey, and there's this really interesting kind of warband that gets formed around the following of Jack, and he's got, these people that pledge loyalty to it. Like, they're just loyal. Whatever Blackjack does, these guys are going to follow. They trust him to get them to the end goal, and they, basically never cease to be amazed by these seemingly normal things to us that aren't to them, that they see Jack do. So he's earned a lot of reverence from the people of Keymark. There's certainly a lot of humor throughout this book, which I really enjoyed because it gave the book a lighthearted and more of a fun feel, even though there was some really weighty stuff going on in the world, and these people were tasked with some pretty important stuff that they needed to handle. However, a lot of the character relationships, I was laughing as we got to know some of these guys and some of their personalities. And there were plenty of situations that were just feel-good situations throughout the book. And I thought, maybe just because this was YA, there was more of that than in like the traditional fantasy that I've been reading, but I was okay with it. I thought it was really well done, and I got really connected to a lot of these characters by the end of this book. Overall, I enjoyed this book a lot. I listened to it on audio, and it was actually narrated by A.R. Witham himself. So if you're looking for just like a fun, pretty quick read to toss in between some of these bigger books that we read as fantasy fans, I highly recommend giving this one a shot. That's going to do it for today's video, guys. Just wanted to do a quick review of this because I just finished it recently and I did really enjoy it. Now it's time for Comedy with Colin. Today's joke: why should you wear glasses when doing math? If you think you know the answer, drop it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a like. That way maybe more people can see this and hear about this awesome, fun little read. And if you guys are enjoying the content on the channel so far, please do consider subscribing as it helps me out a lot. I hope you are all enjoying what you're currently reading, and remember, you're always welcome in Colin's Corner.